The impossible finally happened. League can be played for fun. To the rescue comes Swiftplay that makes games faster, as the name would imply. Now, with Atakan, feats of strength, new boots, and general League of Legends snowballing, you'd assume this would be awful. But unlike just piling on rewards for winning teams like this Noxus season has done, Swiftplay makes it faster for everyone. To cut to the chase, pretty much every full game of Swiftplay will see all players get to full build. In my first game of Swiftplay, though I made my opponent AFK straight away, everyone else got to full build, even with the enemy Vayne fed out of her mind, and my apologies sir, but it's true, my kinda bad jungler still made it to full build. This is because the gold you gain in Swiftplay accelerates as the game goes on. Later on, minions, kills, objectives, pretty much everything will give increased gold. And most importantly, you get even more gold from things when you're behind. Pretty sure this includes passive gold income as well, so long as you're making attempts to farm, get objectives and play the game, you're gonna get gold, you're gonna get items, and you'll actually be able to play League of Legends. My least favourite thing that makes League insufferable to play in a casual setting sometimes is that, especially in bad lane matchups for example, it can feel like, oh no, I died once to my laner, it's over. But in Swiftplay, that's just not a thing. Add to that if you are dying over and over, your bounty actually goes into negatives as you fall behind, making you worth less to the enemies who are getting ahead, meaning that having one of those days where you're going 0-5 isn't nearly as bad as it would be in normal games of Summoner's Rift. Now, maybe you're thinking that if there's comeback gold, well, might as well int and capitalize on the increased gold. No. You are still appropriately rewarded for doing well, and you only make comebacks in gold by actively gaining gold through farming and other stuff. And yes, technically passive gold income as well, but it's definitely more softening the blow of losing rather than straight up rewarding you for losing. And of course, don't forget that the gold reward for kills is only one part of the benefit of defeating your opponent in lane, as there's still a respawn timer, tower plate, minion XP to deny, priority for objectives, and so on. I'll admit that the non-Swiftplay changes that also happen to affect it, that we have thanks to the Noxus themed season, like Atakan and the feats of strength, are the irritating parts of snowballing that do inspire some dread when you fall behind as a team. That's not to say they're death sentences in and of themselves. The boot upgrades are pretty strong, and Atakan buffs do snowball further, but at the very least, Voracious Atakan will kinda cap out as everyone reaches full build and the extra gold on takedowns doesn't do anything anymore. The Ruinous buff is more problematic long term, but spawns in more passive games where there's little going on to already be capitalized on, and more so increases impact of future objectives that at least you can attempt to influence, knowing Ruinous Atakan is spawned. They did hotfix it that so Ruinous will spawn more often, specifically in Swiftplay, so that can affect games a little bit more often, but hey, at least there's only 3 dragons up for grabs, I guess. But regardless what you think of them, they're not Swiftplay's fault, and if anything, its mechanics once again make them matter less. Maybe you don't like this, and that's fine. Normal draft and ranked still exists if you want your victories and early leads to be more decisive, but for casual play, it makes the game so much more enjoyable on so many levels. When you are doing poorly, you're less of a liability to your team and yourself, and trying to make plays on low gold is just sad, but you'll have something to work with no matter what in Swiftplay. Right, we get it. You can make more mistakes and still have a good time. Well, what if we intentionally make some mistakes in Champ Select? Fresh jungle is a blight upon fresh play, an immediate insult to the enemy jungler, and while I might have gotten away with it in Season 4 ranked, my god would it be horrible to play now. But with Swiftplay's rules, you don't need to stack as many jungle camps for your smite to upgrade, and since a jungler like Fresh has ass clears, you're probably going to focus on ganks. And well, the downside is that you are pretty much guaranteed to fall behind playing like this. Luckily, we got those Swiftplay comeback mechanics to get us right back into the game to at least stay relevant. Fresh clears and his 1v1 game with the enemy jungler might be absolute jokes, but what isn't is a Fresh gank. Do smaller jungle routes with just enough camps for level 3, or even 2 if you're feeling spicy, and gank to your heart's content. And when you need to clear, stack on attack speed or a Bami Sender to try and rubber band your way back into the game. Does it win games by its own right? No. But you weren't here for that, were you? Blitzcrank's utility has been so overpowered for so long that his initial fighter role was traded for a support role pretty much by Season 2, and Riot's attempts to give him funny jungle buffs backfired by somehow making support too strong, so he never gets to do funny stuff normally. Not anymore. Pick Blitz in the solo lane, or yes, even the jungle, and stack on either AD Bruiser items and Fimbulwinter, or get tons of AP and Action Arcanist for stackable lightning punches or a thundering burst. One part of off-meta that stops playstyles on some champs from being viable is that they simply need certain items to be playable. And that's usually too much of an ask in normal games, as most viable champions that aren't that overly dependent on certain core items will just destroy you before you ever get there. But with the accelerated gold of Swiftplay, you're guaranteed to get it in good time. This is really dumb, but AP Ashe Ws do next to nothing, but you can slap a Liandry's on it and become so stupidly annoying with burns galore. Stack on more ability power, ult haste, and regular ability haste to spam Ws and Rs. And though you're doing about a tenth of Ashe's regular damage, my god, you're annoying. Something I used to play a lot was tank Lissandra jungle. Now you might notice that Lissandra isn't a tank, and isn't a jungler, but with accelerated gold gains, we can buy tank items to change that more quickly than normal. Lissandra's gank paths and gank power are still pretty good, and though her clears are genuinely glacial, you can probably impact the map quite well using her unique gank paths. Though in the modern day, you could probably play Kayn and do the same thing. But, I mean, choose your fighter. While I could go on endlessly, let me backpedal by saying you don't have to play stupid stuff in Swiftplay. You can play whatever you normally do with less worry about making an early mistake that dooms the entire game. Also, just because we have more gold and more combat gold, you aren't just given it for totally free. You still need to play decently well with intent to win and make comebacks, and you're more likely to get larger swings of gold through your plays or farming. Running it down, though won't feed the enemy as hard as in normal games, isn't just going to grant you gold for existing. So while you can inject as much brain rot into your champ choice and play as you want, the game mode itself isn't inherently brainless or anything. You still get the full Summoner's Rift experience with less of the straight up despair. I know sometimes you might see something like this, and then think, oh god, the game's over. But guess what? We made comeback plays, and no, we didn't win the game, but it was a fun experience nonetheless. This game started with the most glacial blitz jungle clear ever, and me getting killed by the enemy Kayn in my own jungle. But it wasn't just 30 minutes of unspeakable pain, a relentless agony, where time ceases to exist, and all that remains is torture and a deepened hatred of the hypocrisy that damned me to this hell. No, it was pretty fun. I still had items that allowed me to survive the enemy assassins, and even beat the enemy Rast and Kiana in 1v1 duels as a jungle blitzcrank who did very little in that game. And that's the point. It's still fun. You can play League of Legends just for fun now. That's the first time I can say that in 12 years. And that's me playing stupid stuff that doesn't work. Imagine how casually you could approach the game playing normal stuff. I had a Gwen game where we played from behind where it seemed like the enemy jungle Nidalee was just omnipresent and ganking a ton, but we still stuck it out, made the comeback without feats of strength or Atakan, and turned out to win. Also, this far, I've been speaking from the perspective of an experienced League player. I've played for like 12 years. Swiftplay must do wonders for newer players, even if it technically has fake rules that speed the game up and they aren't learning the real game for those that want to step into ranked and competitive. But you know how often I hear players lament about how they can't just queue into normal draft and learn a champion without getting their ass beat? If you queue up Azir for the first time in Swiftplay, you'll be able to get the items you need to play the early, mid, and late games of Azir, and not just in the permanent catch-up state of early game Azir if you first timed him and didn't do well. Not that it's all good. At the end of the day, it's still Summoner's Rift. As I mentioned, you can still queue into toxic teammates that are toxic in chat, with pings, or in gameplay by running it down or going AFK. This isn't exactly a point against Swiftplay though, since it's present in every game mode, even ARAM somehow. If anything, this AFK here won. That's the Mundo I mentioned earlier that I made go AFK in my first game, and the Vayne and her remaining teammates just stuck it out and won the game overall. We didn't win in that game with the inting Jinx, and probably would have had a better chance if she did go AFK, but we were still able to just kinda ignore it and have a fun time. Shoutouts to this Chad, Sion, and Galio for just sticking out the game even though their bot lane is feeding and Goofy Blitz jungle is doing something. So even though you might think faster games and toxicity will go hand in hand, I've, so far at least, noticed people caring less overall, leading to less toxicity, whereas even locking jungle blitz in normal draft is probably going to turn some heads at very least. Not a single complaint was made about the pick in Swiftplay, and actually none of my wacky jungle games have been complained about. No one really seems to care all that often, and if they do, the mute button's right there. As long as you play to win and you're having fun, you're good to go. It's a point I seldom like to bring up, but Swiftplay is better with pre-mades, reducing the number of players likely to give up, int, flame, etc. Even though the comeback potential is so huge in Swiftplay, players must be straight up traumatized these past few seasons because they occasionally still want to FF15 over one death. Hopefully over time, players will realize Swiftplay's comeback potential and just play the games out and focus on having a fun time. So all in all, while it does help to make the experience more casual, lessen the dread of falling behind, and promise a fair game where everyone has opportunity, it's still League of Legends Summoner's Rift. You gotta play well if you want to win, and you gotta put the effort in too, but you just don't automatically lose over the small stuff early game. You could have all team members go 0-5 and probably still get enough gold to be just one item behind your enemy and make them sweat in a 1v1. Since most of my League playtime is casual rather than ranked, it feels like the game mode I've always wanted. I'm not going to comment too hard on the season changes like Atakan or Feats of Strength since this ain't about them, but I think if you put this rule set into any season of League of Legends, I'd probably be playing that by default. That doesn't mean I'll only be playing it, as my ranked allergic self thinks 15 wins for a Victoria skin is doable. Don't know who it is though. And I haven't forgot about and will probably be playing most of those APAD champions in Swiftplay for my sanity's sake. I do feel an air of authenticity derives from playing such atrocities in normal draft. If I ever wanted to make a truly informational video, I'd be basing it off of normal draft rules and gameplay rather than Swiftplay, but for my own fun, Swiftplay looks to be my main way of playing League of Legends, until Riot decides it should go the way of its predecessors before it, and be replaced by very fast play. These are my thoughts put into script and video form, but I'm just one person with opinions, and I'd love to hear from all of you. How has your experience been with Swiftplay so far? Do you agree with what I've said, have anything to add, or kinda disagree? Let me know in the comments below. I'll continue having a blast, and I do also hope they roll out Swiftplay to the remaining servers that don't have it, since it's such a fun way to play League. Thanks for watching. Shoutouts to the members: War Squid, Ultimate Ground, Cryo's Dad, Gentleman Zeta, Lunar Eagle 1996, 53rd Alabama Booty Obi-Wan Kenobi, N Era, AC Immortal, Mr. Noodle, Bass1378, Gilbert Morals, Two-Man Cranfill, Luxurious, Dario Castro, Entity 9, Overseer, N Luca, Colorado Cosmico, Hollowed, Lunar Arc, King of the Crossroads, The Vex Crew, C-Posh, and KORC22. Thank you so much for supporting the channel.